celebrations of Harlem, Lindy Hopping. I'm Judy Loving. This is my partner, Ronald Jones, and we want to welcome you to a circle of sharing, engagement, caring, positivity, and legacy. For Black History Month, we want to promote community, pride, and cultural understandings and cultural heritage. So I would go ahead and start off with a poem that I actually wrote. It's called A Dance Parade for the Lindy Hopping. We saw you in the gallery of dancing pictures. Heels on, no heels. You dressed in A-line skirts, hats, bobby socks, clutch bags with white flowers in hair. You stood next to these beautiful black, brown, and beige men, suited with collared shirts and ties, posing in dancer delight on jazz combinations as the band played on. Photographed and filmed in Savoy ballroom posture, on the avenue, in the church, in the theater, at work, at the picture show, where your style is still imitated today, on shows like Boardwalk Empire, with media personas and custom tailored suits, and women pranced the stage in 1930s get-ups at Fashion Week catwalk shows. Where crowds gathered to marvel at what it used to be, yet they have limited understanding of these African-American dances restricted to few roles and unnamed in credits, yet making a way. They remain anonymous with the entertainment industry, oblivious to the communities in which they reside today. But you, Lindy Hop, were the cat's meow in your dancing garb at the Rennie, Harvest Moon competitions, and segregated Cotton Club. All eyes were on you, front and center, in the imagery of how it used to be. Harlem was in vogue, and so were you. Wishing I could be born again, as a dancer like you, on Air Step Saturday and Sunday nights, bringing back Webb, Fitzgerald, Calloway, Ellington, and Basie. They came from uptown, downtown, and all around town to see. Come as you are, you said, just make sure you can dance. While at Smalls, I could see you too. The sight of you doing those jazzy African rhythms, the cakewalk, flat bottom, boogie forwards, boogie backs, and even the Charleston at times, would mesmerize any ballroom crowd. You were smiling, and in your smile there was a joy, something of an eternal happiness, drawing me to your dance parade today. Langston Hughes said it simply, to fling my arms wide in the face of the sun, dance, whirl, whirl, till the quick day is done. Rest in pale evening, a tall, slim tree, night coming tenderly, black like me. I am dancing and whirling and dancing at your parade today. So welcome to our Generations of Harlem Lindy Hop Series 1. So hopefully we can continue this. So we have on our panel for tonight, we have Margaret Batiuchok, Ms. Davidson, we have Kazzandra Green, we also have Kenneth Johnson, we have Charlie Meade, and we have Ms. Judy Pritchett. So welcome everyone. So I thought I would start off with a question, but most of the questions will be, I like to do panels where there's like a little bit more engagement, instead of just saying, where'd you go, you know. So I thought I'd start off with saying, when I first experienced Lindy Hopping was in 2014, and I danced under the tutelage of Samuel Coleman with the Harlem Swing Dance Society at the Kennedy Center. But when I first fell in love with Lindy Hop was when I was on 125th Street in front of the Harlem State Office Building. And I saw a crowd, Sam was leading a crowd of people into this dance. And I was like, wow, you know, there was like 100 people out there dancing. I had never seen anything like that. I grew up in the hip hop generation. We didn't touch each other on the dance floor. So I fell in love with Lindy Hop that day. In front of it, and it was just like, you know, it was in front of the Adams County Power State Office Building. And all of these people, mostly African Americans out here doing the dance, they probably didn't even realize that it came from here, you know, but they were enjoying it, and you saw the joy in their face, and, you know, and it just was something that made me want to love it, made me want to learn it more, because at that time, I was having a hard time with just doing rock steps, okay? So I would ask you all, where and when were you when you first fell in love with Lindy Hop? Because it's obvious that you still love it. It's obvious that you do love it because you're still doing it. So I will start, we can go across the panel. And the microphone is right here, so everybody can actually grab the mic. Okay, hi.
Hello? Green. Green.
Is green?
Yeah, green. Hello? Hi everyone, my name is Kazzandra Green. I fell in love with Lindy. Actually, I always danced, but Lindy captivated me in 1999. A good friend of mine who I grew up with, Naomi Johnson, used to try to engage me. You gotta come to this class, you have to come to this class. And I was like, oh, I got work, I got kids, I got homework. And I went one Monday and I was hooked under the leadership of Clyde Wilder. And there I met everybody, the majority of the people that's in this room. And I couldn't stop dancing. And from there, we filtered out and started doing different things. But that was the first time in 1999, and I haven't stopped yet.
Good evening, everyone. Julie, I want to say thank you for inviting me to be on your panel. What made me start was from my introduction of when I first became a dancer, and I wanted to learn the folklore because I was first started West African dance. And then when I met Clyde Wilder, we were dancing for this professional group. And my first major performance, just when I was graduating out of high school, was band known as Brooklyn Academy of Music. And since then, we developed a relationship. And next thing you know, I said, he was telling me about swing. And I said, swing dance? And he's like, yeah, so just going to hit bullets. He gave me films of all the, from House of Hopping and all the other films. And it was on the VHS. I spent like a good 3-4 hours looking at this film. I was so high, I couldn't even sleep. That's the stimulation it was. Then he said, if you're ready, we're gonna go out on a Sunday night to swing. And I said, where? And he said, the Cat Club. That Sunday, that evening, back in the 80s, it was, I felt like a little kid, but it was just so, I guess that was my timer. Okay. So being there at the Cat Club, it was great. It was very intimate, and the youngest guy here, and may he rest in peace, Sonny. He took me by his wing, and he just said, "You want to learn how to swing, young man? This is what you have to do." And he just had me drill, and just like women that was open up to not only my mom, but my grandmother. But they embraced me. They said, "You wanted to do it. You'll be just fine, young man." That was like back in the days, and it brought memories. So here it is, the Illinois Jacket Orchestra, the Harlem Blues and Jazz Band. So I was hooked. Going to City College, and then had school the next day and everything. And it was great. And I remember Margaret coming in, and vaguely Charles. And then as I progressed, then Clyde Wilder introduced me to Mama Lou Parks. I had competed 3 years as an amateur at the time. And she has a different type of style, which was jitterbug. So everything was cut time. And it was like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Don't race against the music. So when working with Mama Lou in the competition, then Norma Miller, who I met, that was here at the Cat Club, and Frankie Manning, I met the late Al Mintz, but we really never had a chance to talk and able to meet them. So just going back to the Cat Club, Norma always says the beat. So just getting to know her, she was performing at the old village gate. For some of you who are young don't know what that is. but that was on Bleecker Street in the Village. And so anyway, it just became something I started doing, and it was just, it was just nice. And so I had to buy my whole collections of big band music from Count Basie to Chick Webb's and all of those, because Clyde told me, if you're going to do this, then you have to have music to study and start listening. You have to. It's like being a musician, and if you don't have your acts, then you're not a musician. So it applied, and that's how I started competing. Judy reminded me about an organization. We really didn't get to know each other, which was called the Black Charities Association. And Clyde's ex-wife, who we still keep in touch, but we were competing all throughout the city. And we were winning this and that, and it was great. But I have to say, it's the love, it's the folklore, just to say why I love swing. It's the folklore as an African American, as we tell our story. We told our story, and this is how Frankie Manny came and took Charles Lindbergh, and he took and made it a story of aerials and all this and that, and understanding the visual. What do we express when we dance? Male and female. I love the combination. We have to dance together and to develop that relationship. And it was just where the connection, and it's so much, but it's just where some things you just can't really say, because it's just the spirit of the music that you ride within the phrasing of the music and the changes, and it just gives you that great vibe.
It gives you that love.
That love. Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Well, I started dancing 1946. And I was a unique kind of dancer. I was a barefoot tap dancer. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I was a barefoot tap dancer. And up to 1950, then I went to London and I started doing swing. Swing dance was just natural to me. Played music and I just danced. I didn't know anything about dance in school or anything. So I just loved to dance, and I just dance, swing. I like my partner, like my partner Margaret, best partner. And it was just, I've been dancing ever since. Yeah.
I had read some stuff in the commemoration book. I love looking at the elders' stories about the past. So if you all ever have a chance, you should actually, it's online. It's the commemorative Frankie 100 book. Yes. Oh, somebody has it. Okay. And I love, there's a section called the elders. And you all have some wonderful stories in it about what it was like to dance at these different places and how you felt there. Yeah. So just to bring that up. That, and it's available online via PDF, so you can just pull it up. If you want to print little sections, you can do that. So, yeah.
Tell my stories will take you the rest of the
I'm Margaret Batiuchok, and I'm one of the founders of the New York Swing Dance Society, and we started having dances at the Cat Club. So when we talked about the Cat Club, that was our dance, and it was a wonderful place and wonderful dancing. With my history, I love dancing with my father, but it wasn't exactly Lindy Hop. And then I went to, I was pre-med because I loved dancing with my father. He was a doctor. And I was doing that. But then I dropped out and went to dance school, and so I was dancing. And I remember I was at Cal Arts, and one of the people, Donald Berg, was one of the teachers there. And I danced at a party with him and doing improv Lindy. And my ballet teacher said, I saw you dance the other night. Why don't you dance like that in class? So, but then I didn't do really Lindy until I moved to New York, and I was back at NYU doing pre-med again. And I walked past this club, City Limits, on the way to school and on the way back. And they had country western, and then they started having swing. So I started hanging out there and dancing country western, and we did Lindy at the country western club too. But I danced then with Dean Moss, and that was really fun. He had kind of a Fred Astaire. Both of these men who were African American. It's interesting, I'm just thinking it now, because I hadn't thought of that before, that Donald Byrd and also Dean Moss, who I won the Jitter Bowl contest with at City Limits. He's also a modern dancer. But when I really fell in love with Lindy Hop as like something totally amazing was when I first saw George Lloyd, and that was also at City Limits, and that was like I was at Cal Arts till 78, and then I was I met George in 1983 at City Limits, and so his style was like so smooth and elegant and graceful, and yet like right on with the music and the feeling, and it was something like I had never seen or experienced before. And so I think that was like meeting George at City Limits and dancing with him, and then becoming partners, and we won the Harvest Moon Ball together. But just that first experience of seeing him and seeing, wow, I've never seen anything like it. It was totally amazing. And Charlie was the second.
Okay, this is Green already. I guess my entry might be a little bit different and yet the same. I've been a student of dance, and especially African American dances from the diaspora since growing up. When I first had my first, you might say, racial experience, and then you almost the button is green. Okay, this is green now. Hello? Okay, this one is working. I can keep my hand on the button? No. Okay. Yes, I did. But now it's okay, it's off again. I'm gonna talk, okay. I ain't touching nothing. So I had my first, you might say, racial experience, and when you're a kid, it can almost make you stop doing what you do. But growing up in the neighborhood and going back to what Charlie, a lady saw me tap dancing on the corner, barefoot. And she stopped her car and said, anybody that I can hear and see the rhythms in their feet must know how to dance. And she was an ex-chorus girl who just moved from the Bronx to Long Island. And that was my introduction to jazz dance. And it took many years, actually, this past August, that I realized when I did my first air step. Because, you know, when you have to get something done, I was doing my first show, I was about 12, and this male nurse, because he was my first father, said, okay, put your hands like this, and then you jump up on me, and I can't say what he told me in between. But it was enough to make marks in your brain. Why you do this, or why you do that? And then I went up in the air, but I didn't know it was called an air step. It was called Lindy Hop. I was partner dancing, and I was just dancing to live music, and it was feeling good. And then we went on with life. Many years later, I was with the Sun Ra Orchestra, and I don't know if any of you know Sun Ra. He's not really a swing band, but he's a cultural band, and one of the best places to improvise. And I was myself and a dancer from Pittsburgh named Bob Johnson. We were the dancers on tour at that time. And some Sunrise would rehearse for hours and hours to improvise. So the band was rehearsing, so we were rehearsing. We started experimenting with some partnering things. And that night at the concert, Sunrise, when he did the Fletcher Henderson things, he told us to come out. And at that time, the dancers only danced to the rhythm things. And so we went out, we did our little thing, and then later on that night, he's like, yeah, y'all was doing the Susie Q and that truck and stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute, I thought, you know, we were doing something. And he turned to me and he said, just as there are standards in music, there are standards in dance. And then flip, I was working with a modern dance company named Sounds of Motions, Diane McIntyre on 125th Street. And during our rehearsals, we had heard that there were these groups of older people that did swing dancing, that old time dancing. But then they made it very clear they didn't like professional dancers because they counted. So it was like, oh, that's why we're not working. But I knew I had to find them. I knew they existed. And it was that Village Gate performance that is like, okay, they there. And so I went, and I know a couple of the dancers, Clyde and Amanda, so I was able to approach them. And I went up to their rehearsals on Sundays and just acted like I didn't know dance before in my life. I was going to learn to do this. So they let me hang around, go get the coffee, and and Billy Rick, and so I was the gopher. And then I also used to do a concert every year. So I hired the group and hired Norma. And then she saw the musicians I was using. And then she turned to me and she said, who are you? But for me, it was an important part of a legacy of learning the dancers, the function of the dancers in the culture, how it was used in the culture, the life values that it gave. Because being at the Cat Club, I was at Smalls first. I started hanging back. We were in the elders' environment. It wasn't our environment. They set the tone. And I know because I was putting time out quite often. Especially at the Cat Club. Because it was during the 80s, the 70s, the 80s. We were having our own how to mix and how to respect each other and how to really work together. We were all in our own moments. But being around the elders and the elders setting the tone, they made those moments neutralized so that we all had a chance to grow up together, to understand those human principles of doing this dance, how it functioned, and it has grown from there. We always had live music, maybe up here at Smalls or at Wells or at Nicky's. It was always live music. Nowadays, y'all don't have that privilege of always having live music, so it's a different kind of interaction. But I really give thanks that not only did I learn the dance as a profession and a continuum of the Black dance legacy, which was also, you knew was important because of a man named Pepsi Bethel, who taught at Clark Center, and he was that link between you might say, the vernacular dances and the cultural dances of jazz and the professionals who were doing it. So that's where a piece like Black and Blue could go up, because most of that cast had studied at Clark Center and had studied at Pepsi Bethel. So it was a balance of all of those things that kind of made me the person I am today. Because it's the dance, the steps were just a vehicle for teaching higher principles of life and community.
I was wondering where to start, but I think since you brought up Sun Ra, I'll start there. I always loved jazz as a young person, and I also always loved social dancing. I did whatever kind of dancing people were doing in the day, but it was never the music. It was never my music. And I loved Sun Ra, and Mickey and I didn't know each other, but we used to both go to, what was the name? It was on 3rd Street. The Slugs.
Oh, Slugs, yeah.
Slugs, they played there in 99, stuff like that. So anyhow, I went to hear a concert, it was a benefit concert in Symphony Space that Sun Ra was playing. And the first set, they were wearing all their planetary outfits and all, did the planetary music and all of that. And then there was an intermission. Second set, all the musicians showed up in their ordinary clothes. And Sun Ra gets up there in normal clothes and says, now I'm going to play the music that I really love, which is Fletcher Henderson. Apparently, he had gotten his start in playing with Fletcher Henderson, and he played swing music. And I mean, I must have heard swing music all my life because I was in the air, but this was the first time that, wow, I like that. And somebody told me about a place where you could go dancing to this swing music, and that was Smalls. So Smalls in Harlem, I'm embarrassed to say, I called them up, and I said, you have dancing to a jazz band there? I said, do white people come? They said, oh yeah, not a problem. I said, say it. Not a problem. I guess that was a Monday night. I really became hooked. To this day, I am a regular in Harlem on Monday nights. And that was 1985. So, I haven't quit. Smalls closed pretty soon after I got started there. I really didn't know how to dance. After that, the same band, which was the Al Cobb's band, moved over to a place called Northern Lights. And I have to say that in reviewing my memory, thinking about things I wanted to talk about tonight, I love remembering Northern Lights because I think those were the happiest times of my life. It was where I connected to Frankie Manning. Ultimately had a relationship with him for many years. I felt so comfortable, so happy there. And very often I was the only white person, or me and Ernie Smith were the only white people. And it didn't matter. It was just like one big family. It was like a love fest. And the dancing was a big part of it, but so was the social atmosphere. So I was hooked. That's it.
Right. So many more questions already.
But what I will ask is, today there's more DJs when I go out social dancing. What was it like to actually have like live bands in some of the spaces that you all? If you went to Smalls, was it a live band? And who were actually the band leaders? And who were can you all mention like?
Well, at Al Cobb band. Al's Cobb band was at Smalls and Northern Lights.
Okay.
And before Smalls closed, Frank Foster had a band. And from Al Cobb's band, then came the Harlem Renaissance. And in a sense, Harlem Renaissance was groomed by Frankie in terms of getting a good dance book, because, so that it wasn't the band, like with the Basie Orchestra, it's not about the musicians getting off, it's about the musicians serving the dance. And if the people don't go out onto the floor, that means you're not relevant. And it was that clear, because people wanted to dance, they knew it, and there was certain musics, and I know sometimes nowadays that could be a problem because musicians aren't working as much, so when they get a chance, they want to blow, and honey, trying to dance solid for 5-6 minutes. After a while, you're tired, your communication goes off, and then your relationship with the movement gets disconnected.
Okay. Wow. Can you all tell us a little bit? I mean, people spottingly actually mentioned different places. So Smalls. Where else? Where else did you all dance?
First there was Smalls. first there were Smalls, then, and that was Al Cobb's band, and he moved to Northern Lights on 125th, right, the office building where you fell in love with dancing.
No, it wasn't state office,
Oh, it's
but
like-
It's right, it was between Lennox and,
It's right where former president is
state,
sitting.
it's right next to the state office building.
Well, not
that big one,
Right,
it's in
not
the
in
middle
the
of
next
the block.
one.
It was in the middle of the, and it
Right.
looked like a regular office building, but if you went up to the second floor, then it was a catering place. It was
Right. That's where it was on Mondays.
And then the bands had places, like, kind of like George G on Thursdays now is at Swing 46. Well, Al Cobb's had Small Zone, they closed and he moved to Northern Lights. And then Harlem Renaissance Orchestra were at Willie's first, and then at Wells, and then at Lucy's. And then Nora Miller and her dancers did some shows at the Village Gate in the 80s, I guess it was. And then we started the New York Swing Dance Society at the Cat Club in 85. So there's an overlap because we started, I think, when Smalls was still going at the end, and Smalls was having some, I guess, I don't know why they stopped, they're having some financial difficulties. And we started on Sundays, and we would go to both, and then Small stopped, and then Northern Lights started, and we started to go to both. And then City Limits actually had dancing on Thursdays they closed, I guess, in 84 or something, because they closed, they tore that place down to put up a parking lot, and then, then we started the Swing Dance Society shortly after they closed to have a place to go as well downtown. Is that it? Now there's so many other small places around Swing 46. Oh, Swing 46 used to be the Red Blazer.
Right.
And where was that?
Well, it was the same place.
Right.
It was the Red Blazer, and then the Red Blazer moved to another smaller place, and then Swing 46 became.
And then it was Irving Plaza.
Oh, well, Urban Plaza was, yeah.
Right.
It was still the Swing Dance Society that ran it. We ran it at the Cat Club, and then they closed because they had some financial problems. So then we moved to Irving Plaza, and then they closed because they weren't making enough money from the dancers. So we moved briefly to the new Village Gate. We tried that, and then we also moved to SOBs for very small time. Then we moved to a place on the Croatian Center, which is a huge place, but nobody would go there because it was over at the edge, like by it's like 10th Avenue and 41st Street. And so then we moved to St. Jean Baptiste up in the Upper East Side, which is a nice room, but by that time there were so many other events that people were all spread out, and that Fram started doing, but that's not live music, they have some kind of live music sometimes. What time is Heather who runs that? When did that start?
2001.
2001.
Okay. Was
So
there
this is,
any other, okay, so in 2001 Fram starts, were there any other venues here in Harlem that was still taking on that momentum? Okay. Yeah, so it's active.
Always been on Monday nights.
Cotton Club.
And it's been the Cotton Club probably for the last 20 or 25 years.
Okay.
That's when I.
The Cotton Club was like continuous. Yeah, because you could go to both.
Okay.
You could go to both. And then
Yeah, it's
always
important to
had,
know, they're keeping that narrative that, there was still Lindy going on right here in Harlem,
Yeah, and I think also you have to talk about the dances in the venue. You have to then talk about the economic development and the gentrification of neighborhoods, because that's where a lot of the bars, the dance places here in Harlem got shut down. And even though you ran from one place to another, it was hard to keep that going. So all of those things, it's not just being able to dance, it's the life, the environment, and the economics of a community.
Yeah, that's why it was important for someone like Dr. Barbara Antier to be able to have
this National Black Theater. We're sitting in it today. It's something she bought in 1968, and it's been continual in the community, servicing for the arts for years. You know, and that's a great way to see this consistency and having people to have access to it within Harlem.
And this building also was the first studio museum of Harlem.
Yeah.
Because Diane McIntyre had, and it was almost like an art center.
This is the beginning.
Yeah.
This was the foundation.
This was the foundation before, you know, so for me to teach children's classes amongst art and sculpture in a studio was very special. And those are ways of teaching the culture, living inside the culture without even making it too intellectual. It's just part of life.
The other things that were going on were Associated Black Charities was an organization, and they had yearly events, and a lot of people from Harlem, Delilah Jackson was involved in the publicizing a lot of events in Harlem at the time. She's passed away, but she was really great at letting everybody know in the dance community all over about what was going on. And we would go to the Associated Black Charities events all the time. They had one at Smalls, and then they had one in 42nd Street area, and different places. We go all
46.
Oh, 46?
Yeah, I was there for that competition. Judy.
And then Mama Lou had competitions all the time, so she was always running things. And, you know, like she had her Harvest Moon Ball, but that was like a yearly thing.
That was going to lead me to my actual
Right,
question.
I wanted to say,
Did you all compete here in Harlem?
before you go on that
I
question,
competed.
I wanted
You
to
wanna add-
say
Okay.
that Mama Lou and different organizations also use the Audubon Ballroom up in Washington Heights. That's when I also became affiliated with Lindy. It was moving out people dance.
George and I competed at the Associated Black Charities event at Smalls. And we tied for first place with Darlene and her partner, and we were on TV or something from that. And that was fun. And it was just very welcoming. The whole scene was like really all together, and anyone that was interested in love, dance, and jazz were welcome. It was just wonderful.
Did anyone else compete here in Harlem in any competitions that you want to mention?
Yes, I
Needed.
You know, maybe we just. Yes.
Well, anyway, can everybody hear me? Yes, so,
yes. I guess my time is not up yet. I had several years of competing, which was great. Once again, with Mama Lou Parks for within those 3 years before she passed on, and she rested in peace. And my dance partner, she's in the audience, and we were also part of the Black Charities Association. We competed, just some of them that I was just going through my archives, and I said, wow, this is going way back in the 80s, and we just spent most of our time in. The competition to me was fun. It wasn't even really about winning. If we did, which we done, you know, we won. For some reason, we just couldn't get first place. But I remember the competition that they had at Roseland a while back when Clyde was teaching. Not Roseland, I'm sorry. This was at Irving. No, what's the name of that Clyde? No, it was on around the. No, down in the village, but it's no. It was one of the places that we all went because it was a class when Clyde Wilder taught. It was a great following, and some of the students there were trying to say, you know, come out and compete and represent. My former partner, she's now in California, but we were out there competing. This is when they did the movie blast from the past. They had that competition, and they gave out prizes and everything, but you know, it was like one of the things, and I remember being at Northern Lights and just transitioning, but unfortunately, we just never had any stability, and that's the problem. And what is not here in Harlem, you know, we will start something, and then unfortunately, for like a few months or years, then it doesn't happen anymore. But we were the ones who, from Clyde's class, Clyde Wilder, we helped Mr. Meade on Monday nights to get the swing dance going. And then, oh, the owner of the Cotton Club, Mr. Meade, is the owner of the Cotton Club, I'm sorry. And so basically we helped, you know, we brought the tours. People on tour buses, they came and they saw us entertain, we engaged them and started swinging. And we just brought everybody in every nationality. So it wasn't just who we wanted, but we just brought everybody and had fun, and they really appreciated it. And so, I mean, I can go on and on, but it was just, you just gotta be in there to see, you know, like just visually.
They have the thing at the Alhambra now with the Louis Armstrong group, and they also have that place Dino's had some.
Yes, at the Alhambra, the Satchmo.
Dino's, they had
Yes.
Yeah, the Satchmo Awards, and Jazz Vespers,
Yes.
and Kenneth beat me one year, him and his partner, at the Alhambra Ballroom, doing the Jazz Vespers.
Oh, okay. I wanted to catch up on something which has to do with continuity. At Smalls and at Northern Lights, which followed it, the largest part of the dancers there were older black people who had danced at the Savoy.
Okay.
And then there was a younger group of white dancers who wanted to learn this dance, and Margaret was part of that group, and the people who went on to form the New York Swing Dance Society.
Started the Swing Dance Society by then.
Right, well, at Smalls. And I was somewhere between, I was neither fish nor fowl, I just want to mention. But in terms of continuity, really, Smalls and Northern Lights were a continuation of the Savoy. People were very aware of having known each other at the Savoy and trying to recreate some of what that was about. As far as competition goes, I just wanted to tell a little anecdote that I told Kenneth tonight. I've never been interested in competing. I dance for the pleasure of it. I'm not very good, but I mentioned what a good time I had at Northern Lights. And Margaret used to invite us to come to this Associated Black Charities event, but you had to enter the competition in order to go. And it was the Al Cubs band that was my band, from Northern Lights. So I said, okay. So me and a guy that I danced with all the time, who had been a Savoy Ballroom dancer, his name was Chico, Raymond Olivo. I don't know if you remember him. And he was ancient, he was very old. We entered the contest, and so I mentioned that was my band. Well, as soon as we started dancing, the band really amped it up for us and stuff like that. And then from this table sitting near the band, Norma Mill was sitting there with some people. Go Judy, go Judy. As a result of all this good public relations, me and my partner came in second, and Kenneth came in third. Kenneth and his partner, who was Clyde's ex-wife. They were doing air steps and everything, you know. But we had the band on our side, so, and Norma. That's it for competition.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so, you know, today, the representation, I just got, last year I wrote a blog about 20 questions with regards to inclusivity within the Lindy Hop community, because there's a lack of representation of people of color, predominantly African Americans, that are missing from the scene. So I guess I wanted to ask, what do you believe was the cause, or what led to the seemingly decline in Harlem's black community and its continuity with the Lindy Hop, as far as participating? Did it change because of the music? You know, sometimes Norman Miller will say, oh, Charlie Parker, you know, he didn't want anyone to dance to his music, you know. What was it that you believe, I mean, there could be different answers, of course, that you believe that it strayed away? Was it the music? Was it the dances? You know, what do you believe in it?
I'd like to say something briefly that kind of carries on with what I just said,
Okay.
which is that in those early days, the black people who were doing the dance were quite old. Kenneth, you were an exception. I mean, they were old people.
Okay.
And the white people who were interested were young people. And there was, Frankie Manning always really regretted that younger black people didn't take an interest in this dance. He was really sorry about it. And you know, I don't want to say more about it because I don't really know, but I think it was perceived by the youngsters as old-fashioned, old world, and not what they were interested in.
You know, I just see how like salsa and other dances are passed down from family, you know, in the family and from the parents to the child. You know, I'm just trying to figure out like what could it actually be. It's okay.
During the 80s, I was part of a whole group of young African Americans who hung out at Smalls, at Northern Lights, at Wells, at Lucy's. And the thing is, we're still living in America. It wasn't like everybody integrated and was always happy.
Right.
You know, we were guided by the elders not to bring the politics and sometimes people's rudeness onto the dance floor. But you had an alternative, because you had all of these spots uptown. You didn't have to deal with it if you didn't want to. So there were people, you had a choice of going uptown, downtown, and they were very different environments for different people. But we also know in America, once something latches on to the mass media, it's hard for the indigenous people to compete with the marketization and the PR. African American culture moves on. The music has consistently moved on. And in order to make a living, you have to be able to stay in touch with what is being marketed, what is selling, and who can sell it. And it is not, you know, and a lot of times the elders would even say, well, the younger black people weren't interested. But I know as a professional dancer, I sometimes competed for jobs with the elders because the system did not put the elders as masters and me as the baby. They looked at, oh, she got 2 degrees in dance and experience, so if the masters had given me too much, and that was the thing, they could get more mileage out of me than having somebody who was a specialized person in a time period. So there was sometimes, and I would say there were double standards, because a lot of times when the elders dealt with us, they saw themselves and the struggles and the things that, whereas the white kids were having a good time. They could afford to have a good time. They were organized, you know, things weren't changing as much. But the thing that brought us all together was the love for the dance. But to think that there wasn't racial tension inside, that to think that there wasn't a lack of opportunity, especially if you wanted to continue something, to carry something on. I remember when the hand dancers first went to that big competition out in California, US Open. And that, you know, in America, when you're the first couple to break a line, boy, you catch hell. You know, but when you have the sustainability not to let things knock you down, it opens everybody's mind, it opens people's hearts, you know, so we didn't have to, if we didn't feel comfortable, we didn't have to deal with the need for inclusivity. We could just come uptown and just get the love, you know, and then, I mean, and so those were things that did come up. And the elders living, having survived what they survived, a lot of that was by not making trouble. And they taught us how to keep our focus on why we were there, what we were there to do, and not to let other extraneous things
unravel us. And that's how I was able to really drink from the juices of the elders, because wherever they was, I was going to be, and I didn't care if anybody spoke to me or not. You know, and because I needed the information I needed, but it was more than just its steps. It was human values.
Yeah, so basically that was one of my panel questions about
But the one last
leadership
thing
politics. Yes,
is-
add on, please.
I wrote these articles in this commemorative book,
Oh, wow.
and mainly because I realized, and Deborah Houston was the one who really kind of stayed on my case about doing, because if I didn't write, and that's the other reason why I interviewed people, because I didn't want it to just be my voice, because it was about a lot of people being there. And even the trip taking Frankie to Africa, you know, the global community paid for it, but they wasn't that interested, so I got the opportunity to take him. But I knew if I didn't write these things in this book, there would be no black voice in terms of the writers. So that's where you also have to be realistic and be inclusive, because here's something that now people can reference back to and get a broader feeling through many voices. And that's what it was about. It was many voices, many different experiences. And Deborah always said, you got to be out there, you got to be out there. But at that point I knew, and I'm not a writer, so it was very hard for me to get that together. So it's good that it's there, because it gives us a better reference point and broader perspectives.
Did you want to add something, Charles?
Yes, when I met my partner there, Norma Miller introduced us, and the first night we danced, we won a contest. The very first night. Yeah, Norma says, go and dance with Margaret. She's a very good dancer. And we just went back and would up the spin and come back and win the contest. And we've been dancing ever since. That was about 85, right? 1985.
It's funny because right now Norma is still, she's out swinging at the Savoy out in California as we speak. You know, if anyone doesn't know, Norma Miller is the queen of swing. And I have a chance every summer to hang out with her at Beantown Camp. And we get gossip, and we got cuss words, and we just enjoy each other's company. She gives me so much information about, just various generations that she's gone through, and lived through. So all these connections through Norma Miller, through this, Harlem-born sister that have made connections and still making connections with the, intergenerational part. I've had a chance to bring my Lindy son, Brandon Walker, up to Beantown with us, and he sits amongst, Norma Miller. He's like 20. At the time when him and I first started, that was my first partner. When he first started, him and I first started dancing, he was 14. And to see now 20s in college, and he's able to be around, so many, I would say that the elders, this wonderful legacy, and that's what Mindy's about, to share, and, so I said we wanted to share and engage and keep it going. So do Norma Miller. Everyone mentioned Norma Miller. And Norma will be 100 years old on December 2nd. And if everyone, we're having a big party for her down in Virginia, at the part of the International Lindy Hop competitions, and definitely, and yes.
When is it?
That's going to be in November, after Thanksgiving. Yeah. So you can look online, go to ILHC.com for International Lindy Hop competition.
Norma also was how I met Frankie. So I met Charlie through Norma, and then I also met Frankie through Norma. She was having her rehearsals at Sandra Cameron's studio, and they asked me to come and sit in and learn the routines, so that if they need, as an understudy, if somebody got hurt. And so Frankie walked in one day, and I didn't know who he was, and he was very quiet. He's standing there, and then Norma introduced Frankie. This is the great Frankie Manning. He wouldn't have said anything, and that's how I met Frankie. And then later we danced a lot. together. And so Norma was fabulous.
Yes.
And, you know, in terms of
She introduced me to a great dancer, Baby Lawrence, in London,
tap dancing.
tap dancer. And we've been friends ever since.
I just wanted to add to what Judy was just stating, and I remember when Norma Miller had invited me as an apprentice, and during her rehearsals, she just said sit and watch, and meeting Frankie Manny's son, Chaz Young, Deborah, and a host of others. Before I met Mickey, and Clyde Wilder had Imani Payne, and just learned the choreography. And one of the things I always remember, give me a beat. Give me a beat. Give me the beat. Give me the beat. And so, but it was also great working with them as well. But to say all of that is, Norma is the person that will embrace you, and she welcomes you. If you want to learn, she just gives you open arms and all that, you know. No, really? Yes, I mean, I can't say, but yes. Yes, but she's a disciplinarian, you know, and that's that old school. When I first started learning to be a jazz musician, and I had to audition for Jazzmobile, and this is when I started transitioning into dance and being jazz trained with down at Clark Center with Pepsi, Bethel, and all of them. And if you're going to be here, then you better be here and come back and do the homework. So Jazzmobile, those musicians, is like how Norma is. It's like, if you're going to learn this, then don't waste my time. Yes, be serious. And that's where it all came. You need to buy your music, you know, listen to it. But one thing is the essence of listening to the live music. And I remember the year when legal centers first started their out-of-doors swing dance, and it was only $2 to dance in that little small dance floor. $2. Now they want $500 just on the floor. I'm exaggerating, but yes, but it's $2. And it wasn't as big as what it is now, but it has grown over the years. But yes.
I think what makes Norma's energy special for all of us was that Norma came in, when she came back to New York, she came in as a performer. She never got out of the business. And when you're hustling to be a performer, you have to be on, you know. And she was not about teaching the way you get taught in a regular dance studio. You had to come in knowing to dance and being able to hear rhythms, phrasing, and if you couldn't, then you need to be on the side and learn it before you come onto her space. So her standards are high because it wasn't about recreation. It was about making a living and being the top performer. And yes, she has lasted 99 years to finally get what she's going for, because she had absolute focus. She was going to dance. She was going to do this. She does her comedy. She does her writing. But it's all about her life as an artist. And that is why we're all connected with her, because that's the standard, you know. Frankie, so when he had to feed his babies and stuff, he had to go get a job. But he never stopped dancing, so that when he was finished that, he could go back to his love. A lot of people have done that. But Norma, she's gone the whole gamut.
Okay, so we're going to wrap it up and leave it with Norma. All right, what I will say is that we'll actually take this time now for the Q&A, and I'm going to pass it over to my partner, Ronald Jones, because I have to go get you all some food. And there's his name. All right,
thank you, Judy. Okay, nice hand for the audience. Now, I want to ask a question that I get asked a lot. People refer to swing dancing as either jitterbug, Lindy Hopping, What is it? Is there a difference? Is there a big difference between swing dancing, Lindy Hop, and jitterbug? Anybody?
People call it different things.
It's the same thing.
Audience, same thing. Okay, now there's another rule of thought that you can only swing dance off with certain music. Is that true? It has to be the old standards.
No.
Tell us, Charlie.
Okay, right? So we don't have to do that. So now, excuse me, sir?
Let me say this to you.
All right, hold on.
I'm from the old school. Swing dancing, you must know the beat. We didn't learn this two-step, four-step. You got to know the beat. Stay with the band. That was what it was about.
Okay. In other words, you got to listen to the music. Basically. Wait, I'm coming over to you.
Is there a difference between East Coast and West Coast swing? Is there a difference between East and West Coast swing, or is it the same dance?
Audience?
Well, East Coast, if you say East Coast, West Coast swing is a certain type of dance, and that's done in a swat, and that's a different style than Lindy. It came from the Lindy years ago in the 40s, but it's developed into its own dance with its own style with different music. But now, did you mean like Lindy Hop on the West Coast, or you meant West Coast swing?
I meant West Coast swing.
Yeah, that's different. That's a different dance. It's a development from the Lindy. Like South Carolina, they have the shag. I mean, there's different styles of dance that are not like Lindy, or their development of it in regional areas.
Any more questions from the audience?
I'd like to address that at the Cat Club, when you're surrounded by elders who some came from Brooklyn, came from the Bronx, and they all had their own voicing. And I remember sometimes you be dancing with somebody and they look over and they say, he from Brooklyn. You know? So that within the voicings, you had communities, that's how you told the difference, because you didn't go to a dance school in a studio and somebody tell you what's right or wrong. It's from hanging out and being around the people of your peoples that you pick up your voicing. You know, but the one thing that brings everything together, no matter where you're from, is the music. Either you know your music or you don't know your music.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, hold on a second. You may change it over.
I'm loud.
No, take your voice. So this is for. Come on.
Okay. Thank you. I've been swing dancing since the late 80s. And I owe a huge debt of gratitude to Margaret, who got me started, as many of the people who are very fond and dear to me. And I'm really, really grateful that there's been these pockets of people around the country who have endeavored to go learn about swing, its roots, and to learn the dance, and to keep it going. And every place I go, first thing I do is go look on the web for where is there dancing. And it's instant community for me. And one of those places I am a lot is in Middletown, Connecticut. My mother's family is from Middletown. As a child, I was dragged around the Wesleyan campus to the Russell Library. And Middletown has become this little hub of dancing in Connecticut at Vinnie's. And Vinnie D'Amato owned a department store and owned a building, which he gave to the community on his death to be used for dancing specifically. And I'm wondering, having been at Wesleyan so long, did you have anything to do with that and the cultural involvement of its development?
Well, kind of, yeah. Well, I was at Wesleyan for 17 years, so yes, Norma was up there, Frankie was up there, all the tap dancers were up there. I forgot there's a guy who took my class and started one of the early swing clubs that ended up, I think, on Main Street. Isn't that where Vinnie's place? Yeah. And I actually learned early in the early days, busked
the Harlem Renaissance Band up to the campus, and they had a big, so yeah, swing was very, because I taught jazz dance from a historical perspective in the studio. So as the music changed, as America changed, the style of dancing changed, and swing was how I ended the first semester and how I started the second semester. So that was very much part of my curriculum.
Okay, next question. The next audience person here. Okay, you want to get everyone should think about what they want to ask, because maybe questions that you thought about in the past, but now's your chance to ask the elders.
I grew up in jazz in Boston, and then we moved to the New York area in 1976. But I remember as a 3-year-old going to jazz clubs, and I did that. I went everywhere with my parents as an only child. And so I think one of the earliest memories in Boston was hearing Buddy Rich at, what's his name, Lenny's on the Turnpike. I don't know if anybody knows those old Boston clubs. But in the early 70s, I was at the Village Vanguard and all the clubs downtown in New York. And then we'd go to Carnegie Hall and hear Count Basie and Ella Fitzgerald. And then, we'd be in these lofts, and people were, playing marimba, and, we'd go to the Martha Washington Hotel, which was a complete dive, and go to these all-weekend jazz happenings. And of course, I was the only kid there, so, like Major Holly, the bass player, was always like, hey, how you doing, kid, and all that stuff. But there was never any dancing. And I wanted, so as a kid, there were people, all kinds of people there. Lots of African Americans, lots of white people. But it was, more nightclubby was more white people, for sure. And as jazz got more sort of concertized or, met a larger American public and became popular, we lost. I never had the opportunity to see jazz dance to, even though I was out in the 70s, it was gone, or my family wasn't choosing to go to venues that had the opportunity to see that. So I feel like there's this big tension about being a success and having the music reach a larger audience and losing this cultural connection. But my dad danced the jitterbug to rock and roll in the 50s. So we had a big living room when we moved to the new house in 1976 in the suburbs, and he'd get inspired and put on Little Richard and Billy Early and the Comets and Johnny Be Good. The question is, so basically, thank you, Ronald. I did the jitterbug with my dad in the living room to rock and roll. But we never, ever did it to jazz. Until I went to Dance Manhattan in 2014 or something like that. And then George G was playing and was like, oh, I'm home. This is what I've been looking for. I didn't know I was looking for. But the question is, what happened?
The music in the late 70s and 80s was different. And when you talked about the loft era, I was in the midst of the loft. And almost every band had a dancer, but it wasn't swing. It was interpretive. And inside of that, you could swing out because nothing had labels. It was about your relationship with the music. And I would go to those clubs during that time. Dancers would come in, and you get invited to sit in just like a jazz musician. And this musician, some of y'all might know Hammond Blewett, who just passed this year. You go to his gig, and we would just be finished rehearsing with Diane McIntyre. He's like, y'all sitting there? Like, no, man, we just tired. We just want to hear the music. Y'all don't sit in, y'all don't dance. I'm going to blow you out of here. And he knew because of that, the way they constructed chords and stuff, they could hit chords because Summer could do it too. and it could hit your back, go up through your back, and you say, I got to go home. You know, because that's the power of music. Bernard Pretty Purdy, he could do the same thing with drums. He played the drums, and if he was mad at you, he could blow you off of that bandstand. You need to get off the bandstand because that's the power of music and movement and the vibration of movement. But during that time, it was just a different style, you know. But the loft era, because of the, you know, the clubs and the fines you would get at that bill that just got repealed. That's another reason why. That's another reason why people couldn't dance. So when you got into the lofts, where the musicians had more control of their music and their product, you not only had dancers, you had poets, you had actors. It was real interdisciplinary. But what you're that they called it boogie woogie too. You know, they called it, and Clyde and Amanier actually represented a boogie woogie competition in Europe and won. They were swinging out, but the music was boogie woogie. So, you know, once again, it's how you relate to your music.
Okay, I'm going to bring up a question here. We say that there's a disconnect with the youth and this dance. Can anybody answer the question how we can get youth back into this dance? I'm under the impression that to gain their interest, you have to use a bait and switch. You know, there's a bait and switch. They don't realize that sometimes they do break dancing and stuff. There are certain steps that they do that come out of swing and they don't know. So how do we want the audience to think about this? A way of showing them through the music some of the music they have today that has nothing really new under the sun. That some of the stuff she's doing is seen as linear or swing. So anybody have any idea how we can do that?
I don't have an idea, but I know in the earlier days when I was taking the class at County Cullen, it's not on at County Cullen, I used to bring my twins with me, and they was like 12 or 13. So we started doing the stops, and they used to sit there and watch us do the stops. And so my son and daughter started stepping off of it, which they do at the college, different colleges doing the steps. So they infiltrated doing the stops into doing stepping. But nowadays, the kids, I don't know how difficult that is. If they're in another generation, they don't want to touch each other.
There's people in the swing community now, some African American younger people that are doing breakdancing and bringing it to, who are now swing dancers who also do the hip hop and breakdancing, and they're sharing it with other people like Shanna and Natasha and different people, and they're also infiltrating through the tap community. So like the tap dancers and the break dancers and the swing dancers are kind of getting together and creating new things. And I don't know if it's coming really back to the old style of swing, but I think after a while, maybe it will, but it's using it to create kind of new things. So the styles will keep changing. It's all the influences of the younger generation are coming in and changing it. Yeah, well, I think it's happening, but just on a maybe small individual level of the people that are in the scene now. That's not that many.
And it's according to what neighborhood. As a dance educator, and I do residencies at different schools and stuff, it is what it is. And when you really hit what I call the thing, and it's about rhythm, it's about music, it's about humanity. What is the essence of this dance? It's about two people relating to each other. And when I used to accompany Frankie in the early days of his teaching, and we actually went into high schools and stuff, he went into just the whole thing of somebody asking another person to please dance and what that means. And when you translate those movement intentions between different people, because you're absolutely right, with society today, touching is a thing. And there were some young people who wanted to do air steps, but I said, but if you don't touch each other, you can't do the air steps. So we had to then have a discussion between sex and just human contact. And sometimes and when we got that, you know, then we could dance.
They woke up.
Yeah, it's because it's what you experience is. And it's the thing about how to, you know, put it out there. What you experience, as Frankie would say, you didn't see no Lindy Hopping without a smile on their face. And when you hit that thing, little kids find that thing, and it sometimes goes, I'm working with some first and second graders, goes all the way back to those children hand games and rhythms that give you coordination and rhythm and the song that goes with it, and you get it in your body, then they can move. They can move, but sometimes we got to go back to our basic things that go all the way back to Georgia Sea Islands, to Africa, that the principles of life, those are the things. And then you will see them in hip hop and as, you know, and all this other stuff.
Good evening, my name is Dr. Flora Leandro, and my strong belief is that it just needs to be reintroduced. I think it's important to understand that we have to connect to the younger generation to understand and not just say, I don't understand what this generation is. We, as elders, as olders, to make that point. And me being an educator and also being a holistic doctor, I believe that incorporating everything and principles is very important. And what I'm finding is keeping things simple with respect, love, and admiration. And I have been very thankful 5 years ago meeting Louis Boone and having Davidson and making myself aware that when I speak to people and incorporate the love, everything will kind of vibrate and gets connected, and knowing this gentleman here as well and has helped me. And so what I do now is go to the younger generations and bring them and say, they're like, what's swing? And then once you educate them, they're interested, they're down for it. You know, so that's my mission now. I'm going to Swing 46 and Cotton Club, you know, and letting them know. And I bring my friends, you know, 30, 40 age group, and bringing them down and letting them see that. And before you know it, it's just about opening and being open to understand these younger generations. And it's instead of saying, well, I don't understand, they don't understand. No, it's up to us to make them understand in a loving and kind of way. So that's my belief.
A lot of things too, people don't do it in their families anymore. They don't like pass it down and dance with people in their homes. You know, even in small space or different events, you know, it all becomes the same in a different commercial way, instead of like at a wedding or at a party having, you know, having swing music or different types of dancing and passing it down like through family groups. Educating. But just by doing it with them, and rather than like have to educate you, you know, they're just having fun and bringing them in to dance with you in some way. I mean, yeah, it's the joy of it.
We find that the youth now, back in the days, you had some place to go to dance. But now, people look at it now, where do the youth go to dance? If you teach them this dance, where do they go to practice it? Where are the venues that's open for them to go and have fun?
But personally, I think it's to also keep it simple. And my answer to that is, let's start at home.
Let's keep it simple. Let's start at home. And growing up in the Bronx, native New Yorker, Puerto Rican roots, it was in the living room. And so that's, again, something that is in our culture, African Americans, so as Puerto Ricans, it starts at home and in the living room. If you have to move the couch, and there it is. And that's education, making it fun. So family, love, wisdom, principles. So we as adults need to understand and make that aware for our children. Let's make it simple. Let's start at home and move that couch and make it happen.
Kenneth was still waiting.
How you doing? I'm Victor from Tap Takeover. We run into the same issues with Tap as well. We just found a home at Go Hard Dance Studio on 137. But for the last 2 years, we've been having trouble just finding a place to dance. And a lot of the schools, like Ruth Williams has closed down, Bronx Millennium has been outsourced to the Bronx, pushed out to the Bronx for gentrification. We need to make sure, we sit on these boards, they're building these new developers. We gotta ask them, do you have a studio for the community? Do you have a place for people to go to do things, programming like swing and tap and historical stuff? Let's tie it into the history behind funding to have it, so that we can make sure that the funding to have these places.
And America's changing, and a lot of programs are going away. We have to do maybe in somebody's house, maybe in somebody's basement. We got to mobilize and empower ourselves, not only with programs, but economically. We got to buy the space. You got to buy the space. And then you have to cultivate it, you know? And if you can't buy it, as you say, put it in, have those rent parties, have those house community parties, you know? But we have to look at it. We cannot just depend on somebody giving us something. Because what they do is, when they get tired of you, they go up on the rent, and then you got to go away. So, but if you own it, I mean, that's what this building represents, Black ownership, so that they could, Ms. Dr. Barranti could empower, so that all of us have been able to benefit from the sacrifices and yet the insightfulness that she was aware of in purchasing this corner. And we've all, the whole community of Harlem has benefited. So that's why I was very happy when I saw Julia and Ron working out of here, because that is legacy and that's tradition, you know. So that's what she left us, and that's what we got to pick up on, you know.
Now, another question, she was talking about moving the couch over and people traveling. My nephews and stuff, I was at my sister's house, and the younger generation, when they connect to something, they connect. I remember staying at my sister's house, and we had a knock on the door, and she looked at a bunch of kids outside. And they came there and said, we want to challenge your son. I'm like, got you a pistol or something? What's going on here? You know? But my sister automatically knows what they meant, because he did some kind of video. So she just cleared the living room, went to the store, bought chicken, and the kids came in and they just broke dance. They started break dancing, and that was the challenge. So if we can get them to see this swing dancing, the energy in it, because right now the youth need dance to have energy. You know, they need to see energy and a connection with energy. That's how you get them hooked. And then now they come to the house and say, I want to challenge your son, and they be doing swing out in the living room or something. That's what we want. You know, get that connection going.
I just wanted to say something, Ron, in terms of your question, venues. When I was in junior high school, when I learned breakdancing, we did have venues like the Rooftop that was up in Harlem, and I was one of them when we got the cardboard box and we were on the street, so that was our venue. We did it anywhere and everywhere. However, when you talk about venues, now these kids are so creative, they were performing on the trains, you know, but I love it, it's art. However, we can take that same thing and create pole dances where they now flip the hats, and it brings me back during the lockers when they were used to perform on Soul Train. But when we talk about engaging our kids, I think now today is a little different than our era. We just did what we were told, but we have to listen to them and we have to compliment them. Today, the struggles of what the young adults are going through, in the homes, we have to help build their self-esteem and say, what would you like to do with what you've done? I love what you're doing. Can we work and bring you to more information? How do you create those steps? And then we can start to engage and collaborate and give them the foundation. That's where it all has to start.
Well, I think it's been a very interesting discussion, because I love to dance. I never went to a dance school in my life. I'm from Washington, D.C. We learn how to dance behind Daddy Grace Church, Follow the Fine Church, because in those days, in the 40s, black jazz musicians had no place to practice. So they all joined the bands in the church. So people shouted, but you know the music was saying do something else. And so we used to swing outside, and they would come out there and say, get away from y'all, heathen. Doing this, dancing to the church music. We was saying, they don't know, it ain't no church music. That's music. And then we danced in the street because in Washington was segregated. So therefore, in your own community, everybody was together. Everybody danced. And the children danced. My kids, to this day, they've grown, I'm grown, I got great-grands and great-great-grands. We still dance together. But if you don't bring your children, I said, let's go to a dance. If a community center doesn't have a dance, there's no liquor so the child can get hold of it. I think they will love to stand there. Swing dancing gives you, with me, is the feeling. Each instrument makes me move a different way. So I'm not listening to the beat. The music just directing me. And I just feel good. I was dancing last night. Yeah. I danced, I went to dance. I know dance. I know dance. I know every outfit of dancing in Meade, as long as they do it. And so when I'm sewing, I get up, the little thing, and sit back down and sew. We have to bring the children. We keep saying that we have to listen to them. No, they have to listen to us. I'm the elder, 88 years old. You won't listen to me.
I find that with children, young adults now, you ever get on the train and a bunch of kids just stand around leaning in front of the door and you trying to get by? Now there's two ways to get by. You can just push your way through, but if you got a bunch of kids standing around the gap and hat and that, I find 100% of the time, especially up in the boogie down front, up around under Cliff Avenue, all that stuff, a place called the Nine. You can walk there. All you have to say to them, excuse me, young man, can I get by? And it'll open up like a Red Sea. It'll open up like a Red Sea. If you go, come on man, move, get out. Then you got conflict. But if you just say, excuse me, young man, can I get by? Even in the subway, they move. Because now they see you as an elder, and they treat you as one. And they see you giving them respect, so you get it back. And of course, you're going to get one knucklehead in the group that's not going to move. But you find out who the boss is, because he'll start yelling at the other guy to move out your way. Because you said, sir, can I get by? Or young lady, can I get by? So then you got the interest already, because you're not talking down to them. You can't talk down to the youth now. If you want to get into this dance, you go pop, you know what step they really like? The tandem. Because there's a lot of energy in it. So once you get hooked on that, they know they got to hold hands to do it, then you can add and do other stuff. So it's a bait and switch thing with children. One more question, another question?
Hi, my question, it's not so much a question, but a suggestion. Some of the challenges have been, and I'm a parent of a few children, is the financing of classes for students. It is a challenge. And I'm going to speak from the African American community in particular, because our families are really struggling in this country. However, I believe in utilizing the schools, because that's where the children are. They spend a significant amount of time there. And if you work with the parent community, there's money set aside. It's called parent engagement funds. If you get to those entities and speak to them about what you want to offer, there's a way that they can fund programs through that system, that it doesn't come out of this main school board's department money. It's Title I, if I'm not mistaken, Title I funds that are designated for parents to engage with their children. And if you create programming around swing, which is something I'm working with way out in Far Rockaway, where they have none of this amenities of dance schools all over the place, and talking to the parents, and they're interested in doing work and engaging your students, and they don't have to pay for physically paid classes. And then you have the facility of the school set up for you. So you have your infrastructure, you have your kids, you have the funding. All you have to do is go to them and bring the lessons to them. So that's just a suggestion that one can use. And you can also reach into the school, because they also get budget that is for arts and music and dance, and get them to allocate some time, whether it's a part of the semester or for a whole year, a whole bridge class around swing dance. And you can incorporate it with what is about swing and why it's important for the Board of Ed, because it's part of the New York City history, and bridge that gap. So that's just a suggestion.
We love those suggestions. the more the resources. Yes.
Hello, everybody. So good to see you all. I'm enjoying it so much.
Sweet, y'all.
But I wanted to say, one of the things you missed, back in the day, we didn't have TV, Nintendo, video, VCR. That's right. We had none of that. We had no distractions. We had to turn on the radio and wait for the band to play. And we devised the dance for our entertainment. This is our entertainment. We loved it. We got our girlfriends. We didn't dance with the boys because we were kept separate. So we got the girlfriends and we danced up. I got a new coming now. Got this coming. Let's do this. We were so involved in that. And we had no distractions. Today, there's a computer. There's the, you name it, play it. Yes, older phone. They can't do like activities like we didn't have the multi-activities, but we wanted this dance so bad. There was no way in the world no one's going to take it away from us. But today, they don't really have that feeling. I don't know if the energy is low, because they're not eating nutritional food. They're getting the fast food, it's like the best thing, the sugar, the salt, the oil, the grease, this. Oh, if we only could understand that part of it, we would be dancing, and the men can lead in that dancing. Because everywhere you go, the men are going to say, oh, I got bad feet, I got a bad leg, I got this. Why don't the men dance? I don't understand why you don't dance. With us. Yeah, they got 2 left feet. I said, that's why you don't dance. They are really hold back for the young people to do this dance. The women want to dance. I told a couple, I said, you know, we women, if you men, it's one thing in your life that a woman wants. There's one thing that a man don't even know she wants. And the women don't know they want it either. They want to dance. They want a man to lead them across the floor. They don't do it. And every time I dance, I say, well, they say, oh, you dance this way, you dance. I says, well, I just follow, you know, I'm dancing with Bernard, I follow Bernard. I'm dancing with Clem, I follow Clem. And June introduced Clem to me, she introduced Bernard to me too. So she's very good at getting through together. But I just want you to know that the dancing is in as far as the women go. Now the men, I don't know. I went to a Kwanzaa, let me tell you, and then the lady said she invited me, she wanted me to dance. I said, well, I don't dance by myself. She said, my partner was not here. Why can't you dance by yourself? This was gun ho. You know what I had to do? I had to go and interview the men, all men at the Kwanzaa, right? And all of them had the same dance, and I couldn't dance on this. I found 3. One man said he would dance with me if I showed him the step. So I showed him the step, right? The other guy said he would dance, and I showed him the step, and he had a son. His son followed his father. He wanted to do it, but he never got to dance. But the 2 that I showed them how to dance, a man only needs 5 steps. That's all he needs to know. The woman does all the work. Just lead. That's all you need. It's 5 steps. I mean it. And I will show you on the spot. Because they say, oh, you do teach. I said, I don't wait for you to come to me. You're going to learn it now, right here, on the spot. There's no reason that you can't do it. You got legs, and you got a mind. Don't die with a brand new mind, please. Just use it. Use it up. And we got to dance. It's a healthy thing. It's not only healthy, it's a therapy. Oh, excuse me. I want you to know, you get you move your body. What's the problem? If you don't move your body, you're going to lose movement. You'll be a sedentary person. And you want to be a person that moves. Why would you want to be sitting and day in and day out? No. In a nursing home, no. I better shut up because I'm going to offend you.
I don't know if you haven't mentioned that she's actually a published writer. Did she mention it? Well, she's a goddess, so she has a book. It's called Wellness Witness.
I'm a wellness witness.
Wellness Witness by Miss Etta Dixon. It's available on Amazon. So I actually have it. My mom and I have been reading it. You know, my mother's actually cut down on smoking because of her. So you know, it's a good thing. So the food is here. I ordered it from Jacob's, and I just wanted to let you all know. Thank you so much for coming and being a part of our Generations of Harlem Lindy Hop. It's our series 1. Hopefully we can keep building on it. It was an idea that I thought of. I would say when I first started bringing Lindy back to, not even back to, but bringing Lindy Hop to this space here. And I said, you know, Ron, I would love to do a give back. Because I like sharing, I like giving back to my community. And this is a way to give back. You know, something that I received a lot of love from. I lost weight because of it. I met wonderful people around the world. So this is Ron and our give back to the Lindy community, especially the generations that came before us, that we still have a wonderful way of actually having communication, and still under their tutelage, because we're learning still. You know, I've only been a few years in, and I hope to continue. I want to live till 99 like Noma. But yeah, so thank you all so much for being a part of this shared experience, our memories, and we're having it taped because I think the narrative needs to be something that we continue to have. It can't be something that we just share amongst ourselves, but we should have it available to others. Anything you want to say, Ronald? You ready to play music? Okay. Food is on and up. And there's some memorabilia and things that some of the panelists have, but we're going to allow the panelists to have food first. Okay.